The shy office assistant was invisible until a bully pushed her too far. Her Mafia boss's reaction was instant. He destroyed 3 careers in one night. What she didn't know, she'd saved his life years ago on a dark highway. And he never forgets. The champagne tower wobbled as Mira stepped backward, nearly knocking it over. Her heart hammered against her ribs as she steadied the crystal glasses with trembling fingers. The ballroom of Moretti Construction's 42nd floor glittered with chandeliers and expensive suits, but Mira felt invisible as always, just part of the furniture. "Careful there, Mouse." Carla's voice cut through the jazz music like a knife. "We wouldn't want you to make a scene." Myra's shoulders hunched instinctively. Carla Bennett, senior marketing manager, stood with her usual crowd, 3 other executives who treated Mira like their personal servant despite her official title as executive assistant. They called her Mouse because she never spoke up, never complained, and scurried away whenever they approached. "I'm sorry," Mira whispered, clutching her serving tray against her chest like a shield. You'll just what?" Carla stepped closer, her designer heels clicking against the marble floor. The alcohol on her breath made Myra's stomach turn. "Disappear? That's all you're good at, isn't it? Being invisible." The other executives laughed. Marcus from accounting raised his glass in mock salute. "To the boss's invisible pet. 3 years working here and nobody knows why Dante keeps you around." Myra's face burned. She wanted to explain that she worked hard, that she arrived early and stayed late, that she knew every file and every client name by heart. But the words stuck in her throat like they always did. "Maybe she does more than file papers," Sharon from legal said with a smirk, eyeing Mira up and down. "If you know what I mean." The insinuation hit Mira like ice water. Her hands shook so badly the glasses on her tray began to rattle. I've never." "Oh, look, the mouse can speak." Carla circled her like a predator. "Tell us, sweetie, what exactly do you do in those late-night meetings with Mr. Moretti?" Myra's throat tightened. The truth was she'd barely spoken 10 words to Dante Moretti in 3 years. He was always in meetings, always traveling, always surrounded by important people. She'd seen him maybe a dozen times, and each time she'd made herself as small as possible, terrified of being noticed. "I just work," Mira managed. "Please, I need to." "You need to know your place." Carla grabbed the tray from Myra's hands and shoved it back at her chest. Hard. Mira stumbled backward, her foot catching on the leg of a cocktail table. The tray flew from her grip. Crystal glasses crashed to the floor in an explosion of sound that silenced the entire ballroom. Champagne splashed across the white marble like spilled gold. Mira fell, her palms scraping against broken glass. Pain shot through her hands, but worse than the physical hurt was the humiliation burning in her chest. Everyone was staring. The music had stopped. 200 pairs of eyes watched the invisible woman finally being seen, broken and bleeding on the floor. Carla's laughter rang out. "Clumsy little mouse. Maybe now you'll." The laughter died. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Mira, still on her hands and knees, saw expensive shoes stop at the edge of her vision. Men's shoes. Italian leather. She knew those shoes. She'd signed for their delivery once. Who touched her? The voice was quiet. Too quiet. It had the kind of calm that came before hurricanes, the kind of stillness that predators used before they struck. Mira had heard that voice only a handful of times in 3 years, usually from behind closed doors, but she'd never heard it like this, cold and razor-sharp. Slowly, Mira looked up. Dante Moretti stood 5 feet away, framed by the ballroom entrance, like an avenging angel. At 6'3", he dominated any room he entered, but tonight something was different. His tailored black suit seemed darker than usual, his presence heavier. His face, strong jaw, sharp cheekbones, dark eyes that missed nothing, was absolutely expressionless. That was what made him terrifying. Not anger, just empty, lethal calm. Behind him, his head of security, Vincent, stood with his hand near his jacket. 2 other security personnel flanked the entrance. The silence stretched like a wire pulled too tight. I asked a question. Dante's eyes swept the frozen executives.
Who?
Touched her. Carla's face had gone white. Marcus suddenly found his shoes fascinating. Sharon took a step backward, and her champagne glass slipped from her fingers, adding another crash to the wreckage. Myra's hands throbbed. Blood dripped onto the white marble, mixing with champagne. She should say something, should tell him it was fine, just an accident, but her voice had vanished again. Dante moved then. 3 steps brought him to Myra's side. He crouched, his movements fluid and controlled, and his eyes finally met hers. Up close, they weren't just dark, they were bottomless, ancient, carrying weight she couldn't begin to understand. Did they push you? His voice was gentler now, meant only for her. Mira opened her mouth.
Closed it.
Nodded. Something flickered in Dante's expression, there and gone so fast she might have imagined it. He straightened, and when he spoke again, the gentleness was gone. Security. Escort everyone out.
Now.
Sir, the celebration, someone protested, is over. Dante didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. Vincent, make sure Miss Bennett and her friends understand they're never to come within 50 feet of my employee again. If they have a problem with that, they can discuss it with their unemployment benefits. Carla found her voice, shrill and desperate. You can't fire us over this. It was just... Dante turned his head slowly to look at her. Just looked. Carla's words died mid-sentence. Get them out of my sight, Dante said to Vincent. And someone get the first aid kit. The ballroom erupted into controlled chaos. Security began herding people toward the elevators. Executives grabbed their coats and fled. The jazz band packed up their instruments with record speed. Within 2 minutes, the space that had been packed with 200 people stood nearly empty. Mira remained on the floor, frozen, her mind racing. This couldn't be happening. Dante Moretti didn't notice her. He'd never noticed her. Why would he destroy his own company's celebration for? Can you stand? Mira looked up. Dante had removed his suit jacket and rolled up his sleeves. He extended his hand to her, palm up, waiting. She stared at that hand like it was a puzzle she couldn't solve. Strong fingers, a few old scars she'd never been close enough to see before, and a watch that probably cost more than her yearly salary. I don't bite, he said, and there might have been the ghost of a smile at the corner of his mouth. Usually, Mira placed her bleeding hand in his. His grip was warm and steady as he pulled her to her feet. She swayed slightly, and his other hand went to her elbow, stabilizing her. Thank you, she whispered. I'm sorry about the celebration. I'll clean. Sit. He guided her to a chair and grabbed the first aid kit that Vincent had left on a nearby table. And stop apologizing. As Dante knelt in front of her and began carefully removing glass shards from her palms, Myra's mind spun with a single, terrifying question. Why did Dante Moretti care about what happened to her? She was about to find out that some debts took years to come due, and some guardian angels wore designer suits and had blood on their hands. Dante's hands were surprisingly gentle as he cleaned the cuts on Myra's palms. She'd expected roughness from a man who commanded entire boardrooms with a single look, but his touch was careful, almost clinical. Each time she winced, he paused. Sorry, he murmured, dabbing antiseptic on a deeper cut. Almost done. Mira couldn't stop staring at the top of his head. Dante Moretti was kneeling in front of her, ruining his expensive suit pants on the champagne-soaked floor, playing medic. None of this made sense. In 3 years, their longest conversation had been when she'd accidentally delivered his coffee to the wrong conference room and he'd said, "Wrong meeting, but thank you." Mr. Moretti. Dante, he wrapped gauze around her right hand with practiced precision. We're past formalities, I think. Dante, she tried, the name feeling strange on her tongue. You didn't have to do this. Fire them, I mean. I don't want to cause trouble. His hands stilled. When he looked up, his eyes held something dark and unreadable. You didn't cause anything. They did. But Carla's been with the company for 8 years. Marcus handles all the major accounts. If they're gone, then they're gone. He finished wrapping her left hand and stood, towering over her again. Nobody touches my people. That's not a request or a preference. It's a rule. The word "my" hung in the air between them, possessive and absolute. Myra's stomach twisted. Sharon's earlier insinuation echoed in her mind. What exactly do you do in those late-night meetings? We've never. She couldn't finish the sentence, her face burning. Dante's expression shifted, understanding flickering across his features. I know. He moved to the bar and poured himself a whiskey, his back to her. You think I don't know what happens in my own company? The whispers, the rumors they spread about you? Myra's throat tightened. Then why keep me? If it causes problems. Because you're good at your job, he turned, glass in hand. Because you're quiet, efficient, and you don't play political games. And because he paused, studying her face like he was solving a complicated equation. Because you gave me something once, and I never got to return the favor. Confusion clouded Myra's thoughts. I don't understand. I've barely spoken to you. Not recently. Dante took a long sip of his whiskey. 7 years ago. Interstate 95. Late night. Burning car. The world tilted. Myra's hands started shaking again, the gauze suddenly feeling too tight. Interstate 95. 7 years ago. The night that had changed everything. The night she tried not to think about because remembering meant reliving the terror. No, she whispered. That wasn't. You weren't. I was. Dante's voice was steady, certain. Black sedan, flipped twice after a semi clipped it. You were driving home from your sister's place. You stopped. Everyone else kept driving, but you stopped. The memories flooded back. The screech of metal. The smell of gasoline and smoke. A man trapped in the driver's seat, blood running down his face, flames starting to lick at the hood. She'd pulled him out with strength she didn't know she had, dragged him to the shoulder, called 911 with hands that wouldn't stop shaking. You disappeared before the ambulance arrived, Dante continued. I was unconscious, and when I woke up in the hospital, they told me an anonymous Good Samaritan had saved my life. No name. No contact information. Nothing. He set his glass down with a sharp click. I've spent 7 years looking for you, but I applied here 3 years ago. If you were looking. You changed your name. It wasn't a question. Divorce records show Mira Hayes became Mira Chin. You moved, changed your email, got rid of your social media. You didn't want to be found. Myra's chest felt tight. He'd investigated her. Of course he had. Men like Dante Moretti didn't leave loose ends. My ex-husband, she said quietly. He was. It was safer to disappear. Something dangerous flashed in Dante's eyes. Is he still a problem?
No.
He moved to California. Remarried. I haven't heard from him in 2 years. She stood on unsteady legs, wrapping her arms around herself. You hired me because of that night. I hired you because your resume was impressive and you were overqualified for the position, Dante said. I kept you because you're excellent at your job. The fact that you're also the woman who saved my life. He moved closer, and Mira had to tilt her head back to maintain eye contact. That's why I've been waiting for the right moment to repay the debt. There's no debt. There's always a debt. His voice dropped lower, more intimate. You gave me my life back that night, Mira. Everything I've built since then, this company, my reputation, my family's legacy, exists because you didn't keep driving. Because you had the courage to stop when everyone else was too afraid. The elevator dinged suddenly, making Mira jump. Vincent stepped out, his expression neutral, but his eyes sharp. They're gone, boss. Escorted to their vehicles. I made it clear. Good. Dante didn't look away from Mira. Vincent, I want 24-hour security on Miss Chin. Discreet but thorough. Wait, what? Myra's voice came out higher than intended. That's not necessary. It is. Dante finally turned to Vincent. And pull the complete personnel files on Bennett, Marcus Chin, no relation, Sharon Moss, and anyone else who was part of that little group. I want to know everything. Who they talk to, who they're connected to, what skeletons they're hiding. Vincent nodded and disappeared back into the elevator. Mira felt like she was drowning. You can't just people will talk. They'll think. Let them think what they want. Dante's jaw was set, his decision clearly final. You already gave me your trouble years ago, Mira. That night on the highway, you took on my burden without asking for anything in return. Now it's my turn. He picked up his suit jacket and draped it over his arm. And unlike you, I don't walk away until the debt is paid. As he headed toward the elevator, Mira called out, "What if I don't want this?" Dante paused, his finger hovering over the elevator button. Without turning around, he said, "Then tell me you regret saving my life that night, and I'll back off." Silence filled the empty ballroom. Mira opened her mouth, but the words wouldn't come. She couldn't regret it. Despite everything, the fear, the blood, the nightmares that followed, she couldn't regret pulling another human being from certain death. "That's what I thought," Dante said quietly. The elevator doors opened, and he stepped inside. "Go home, Mira.
Get some rest.
And don't come in tomorrow. It's Saturday. Your security detail starts Monday." The doors began to close, but Mira saw him one last time, his expression unreadable, his eyes holding promises she didn't understand. When the elevator disappeared, she stood alone in the destroyed ballroom, her bandaged hands throbbing, her mind reeling with a single, terrifying realization. Dante Moretti didn't forget his debts. And now she was about to learn exactly what it meant to be under the protection of a man who owned half the city. Dante stepped into his private office on the 45th floor, the city lights of Boston spreading out before him like a kingdom made of glass and steel. He loosened his tie and poured another whiskey, but he didn't drink it. Instead, he walked to his desk and pulled up the security footage from the ballroom. Rewinding to the moment before the incident, he watched Mira move through the crowd. Small, careful steps. Head down. Shoulders curved inward like she was trying to take up less space in the world. She'd been doing that for 3 years, and he'd noticed every single time. He'd noticed everything about her. The way she organized his files with color-coded precision. The way she anticipated his needs before he voiced them. The way she never asked for recognition or praise, just quietly made his professional life run like a well-oiled machine. But more than that, he'd noticed the shadows under her eyes, the way she flinched when people raised their voices, the haunted quality in her gaze when she thought no one was looking. He'd wanted to say something, do something, but the timing had never felt right. How do you tell someone you've been searching for them for 7 years? How do you explain that their face has been burned into your memory since the night they saved your life? Dante advanced the footage frame by frame. Carla pushing the tray. Mira falling. Blood on marble. His jaw clenched so hard his teeth ached. He switched to a different camera angle, zooming in on Myra's face as she looked up at him. Even through the security footage, he could see the confusion in her eyes, the disbelief. She had no idea who she was dealing with. Pulling out his phone, Dante opened a locked folder he'd never shown anyone. Inside were photographs, grainy, dark, taken from traffic cameras and emergency response records. The accident scene, his destroyed car, and one blurry image that had haunted him for 7 years. A woman in a blue jacket, her face partially obscured, kneeling beside him on the highway shoulder. He'd enhanced that image dozens of times, consulted experts, even hired private investigators. They'd given him fragments, height, approximate weight, hair color, but never a name. The woman had vanished like smoke. Until 3 years ago. Dante remembered the day Mira had walked into his office for her interview. She'd been so nervous, clutching her resume like a lifeline, barely able to maintain eye contact. He'd almost missed it. The way she tilted her head when she was thinking, the precise way she moved her hands when she spoke, the slight scar on her left wrist from where she'd scraped it pulling him from the wreckage. His heart had stopped. But he'd said nothing. Just hired her, watched her, waited. Because Mira Hayes, now Mira Chun, clearly didn't want to be found, and Dante had learned patience in the 7 years since that night. You didn't build an empire by rushing into things. He'd run a background check, of course. Discover the ex-husband, the restraining order, the name change. Discovered a woman who'd been running from demons while he'd been searching for an angel. So he'd waited, kept his distance, made sure she was safe while giving her the space she needed to heal. But tonight had changed everything. Tonight, she'd been heard on his watch in his building by his employees. The protection he'd maintained from the shadows wasn't enough anymore. Dante moved to a filing cabinet and pulled out a worn leather folder. Inside were hospital records from 7 years ago. Multiple fractures. Internal bleeding. Severe concussion. The doctors had given him a 30% chance of survival. Without immediate intervention, the report read, patient would have succumbed to smoke inhalation and subsequent vehicle fire.
Immédiate intervention.
That was the clinical term for what Mira had done. It didn't capture the courage it took to approach a burning vehicle. It didn't describe the strength needed to drag a 200-pound man to safety. It didn't explain why a young woman driving alone at night would risk her life for a stranger. But Dante knew why. He'd seen it in her eyes tonight. The same quality that had saved him 7 years ago. Mira Chin didn't walk away from people in trouble, even when she should. His intercom buzzed. Vincent's voice came through, professional as always. Boss, I've got preliminary information on Bennett and her group.
Come in.
Vincent entered, tablet in hand. Carla Bennett has been skimming from the entertainment budget for 2 years. Small amounts, hard to trace, but it's there. Marcus Chen has a gambling problem. Owes approximately 80 grand to some unpleasant people in Southie. Sharon Moss has been feeding information to Kellerman Construction, our biggest competitor. Dante's expression didn't change, but his grip on the whiskey glass tightened. Evidence.
Solid.
Bank records, email trails, recorded phone conversations. Vincent paused. You want me to handle it quietly, or? No. Dante set down his glass with controlled precision. I want it loud. File criminal charges against Bennett. Let Marcus's creditors know he's about to be unemployed. And Sharon? He smiled, but there was no warmth in it. Make sure every construction firm in New England knows she can't be trusted. She'll be lucky to get a job managing a hardware store when I'm done. Vincent nodded, unsurprised. And Miss Chen? She's not going to like this level of attention. I know. Dante turned back to the window, his reflection ghost-like in the glass. But she doesn't understand the kind of people we're dealing with. Bennett has connections. Her brother-in-law is a city councilman. Marcus owes money to people who don't forget debts. And Sharon? He paused. If Kellerman Construction realizes Mira is important to me, they'll use her as leverage. So we protect her whether she wants it or not. Exactly. Dante pulled up the security footage again, freezing on Myra's face as she'd looked up at him. 7 years ago, she saved my life without asking permission. Now I return the favor. Vincent moved toward the door, then stopped. Boss, you know she's going to fight this. She's not the type who accepts help easily. I know. Dante's voice was soft, almost gentle. She's stubborn, independent, brave to the point of foolishness. He touched the screen where Myra's image was frozen. But she's also been alone for too long, and I'm done watching from the shadows. After Vincent left, Dante sat in his chair and opened the bottom drawer of his desk. Inside was a small, charred piece of blue fabric, all that remained of Myra's jacket from that night. The paramedics had cut it away from her when they'd checked her for injuries she'd refused to report. He'd kept it for 7 years. A reminder. A promise. I found you, he whispered to the empty office. And this time, I'm not letting you disappear. Outside, Boston slept, unaware that its most powerful man had just declared war on anyone who would dare hurt the woman who'd given him a second chance at life. The game had changed. Mira just didn't know it yet. Monday morning arrived too quickly. Mira stood outside Dante's office, her bandaged hands clutching a folder she didn't actually need. She'd spent the entire weekend replaying Friday night in her mind, trying to make sense of everything. Dante Moretti was the man from the accident, the bleeding stranger she'd pulled from twisted metal and fire. The unconscious body she dragged across asphalt while flames licked at her heels. 7 years had changed him, filled out his frame, hardened his features, added silver to his temples. But now that she knew, she couldn't unsee it. His secretary, Patricia, waved her through. "He's expecting you." Myra's stomach dropped.
Of course he was.
She knocked twice and entered. Dante sat behind his massive mahogany desk, reviewing documents, his reading glasses perched on his nose. He looked up, and something in his expression softened. "Sit," he said, removing his glasses. "Please." Mira perched on the edge of the leather chair across from him, her spine rigid. "You wanted to see me?" "I wanted to talk," he leaned back, studying her with those dark, penetrating eyes. "How are your hands?" "Better. Thank you," she glanced at the bandages. "I can still work. Type, file, whatever you need." "That's not why you're here." Dante stood and moved to the window, hands in his pockets. For a moment, he just stared at the city below. "Why didn't you tell me they treated you like that?" The question hung between them, gentle but insistent. Myra's throat tightened. "I didn't think anyone would care." "I would have cared. You're the CEO. You have important things to worry about. I'm just—" "Don't," he turned sharply. "Don't diminish yourself like that. You do it constantly. Shrinking, apologizing, making yourself small." He moved closer, his voice dropping. "Why?" "Because that's how you survive," Mira wanted to say. "Because when you're small, you're harder to hit. Because invisible women don't get hurt." But the words wouldn't come, so she whispered, "I'm used to being invisible." Dante crouched in front of her chair, bringing himself to her eye level. The gesture was so unexpected, so intimate, that Myra's breath caught. "You weren't invisible that night by the highway," he said quietly. "You were the only thing I saw." Myra's eyes burned. "I don't understand. You were unconscious. How could you?" "I wasn't." Not completely, his gaze held hers, refusing to let her look away. "I remember pieces. Your voice telling me to stay awake. Your hands pulling me out even though you were terrified. I could hear it in your breathing. The way you kept saying it's okay, over and over, like you were trying to convince yourself." A tear slipped down Myra's cheek before she could stop it. She'd never told anyone about that night. Not her sister, not her therapist, not even her ex-husband before everything fell apart. It had felt too raw, too personal, like if she spoke about it, she'd have to relive the terror of thinking she was about to watch someone burn to death. "You saved me," Dante continued, his voice rough with emotion. "And then you disappeared. The paramedics said you refused treatment, gave a fake name, and vanished before they could get your information." "Why?" Mira closed her eyes, the memories flooding back. "My ex-husband. He tracked everything, my phone, my credit cards, where I went. If he'd known I was at an accident scene, that police might want a statement." She opened her eyes, meeting Dante's gaze. "He would have used it to find me. I couldn't risk it." Understanding crossed Dante's features, followed by something darker. "He hurt you." It wasn't a question, but Mira nodded anyway. "Not physically."
He was too smart for that.
He just
controlled everything.
Who I talked to, what I wore, where I worked. When I finally left, I had to erase myself completely. And you've been erasing yourself ever since. Dante stood, running a hand through his hair. "Even here, where you're safe. Even when you're being bullied and harassed." "I was safe," Mira corrected softly. "Until you fired half the management team for me. They deserved it. The embezzlement alone. You investigated them." Mira stood now too, anger sparking beneath her fear. "You dug into their lives because of what happened to me. I protected what's mine." There was that word again.
Mine.
It sent a shiver down Myra's spine. Part fear, part something else she didn't want to examine. "I'm not yours," she said, forcing strength into her voice. "I'm not anyone's. Not anymore." Dante moved closer, stopping just inside her personal space. "You're right. You're not mine. But you're under my protection, and there's a difference." "Is there?" Mira challenged. "Because from where I'm standing, It feels like you're making decisions about my life without asking me. You're right about that too, he surprised her by agreeing. I should have asked. But would you have accepted help if I'd offered? The honest answer was no, and they both knew it. What do you want from me? Mira asked, exhausted suddenly. Why does this matter so much to you? Dante was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was raw, stripped of its usual control. Do you know what it's like to owe someone your entire existence? Every breath I've taken for 7 years has been borrowed time. Every success, every achievement, it all exists because you didn't drive past that accident. Because you had courage when it mattered most. He stepped back, giving her space. I spent 7 years looking for you, Mira. 7 years wondering who you were, if you were okay, if you regretted stopping. And when I finally found you, you were being treated like garbage in my own company, and I'd been too blind to see it. That's not your fault. It is, his jaw clenched. It is my fault because I should have been paying attention. I should have protected you the moment you walked through those doors 3 years ago. Instead, I kept my distance, thinking I was respecting your privacy, and all I did was leave you vulnerable. Myra's heart pounded. So, what happens now? Dante moved back to his desk, creating professional distance between them. When he looked at her again, his expression was carefully neutral. Now you make a choice. You can walk away, transfer to another department, work remotely, even leave the company with a stellar recommendation. Or you can stay, and let me do what I should have done 3 years ago. Ensure that you're treated with the respect and safety you deserve. And if I stay, then you accept that I will protect you. Not because I own you, but because I owe you. There's a difference, even if it doesn't always feel like it. Mira looked at her bandaged hands, then at the man who'd upended her carefully constructed invisible life. Part of her wanted to run, to disappear again like she'd done before. But another part, the part that had stopped on that highway 7 years ago, was tired of running. I'll stay, she said quietly, but on one condition. Dante raised an eyebrow. Name it. No more investigating people without telling me. No more making me the center of office drama. And definitely, she met his eyes steadily, no more calling me yours. A ghost of a smile touched Dante's lips.
Deal.
But the security stays. Fine, Mira moved toward the door, then paused. Dante? That night. You don't owe me anything. I would have stopped for anyone. I know, he said softly. That's what makes you dangerous. As Mira left his office, she didn't see Dante return to the window, his reflection troubled in the glass. She didn't know that while she'd been choosing to stay, he'd been making his own silent promise to protect her from everything, including the parts of his world she didn't know existed yet. The parts that were about to come looking for her. Tuesday morning, Carla Bennett's office was empty. By Tuesday afternoon, her nameplate had been removed from the door. Wednesday, Marcus stopped showing up for work. By Thursday, Sharon Moss had cleared out her desk with 2 security guards watching her every move. The office buzzed with whispers. Mira kept her head down, but she felt the stares following her through the hallways. People who'd never acknowledged her existence suddenly stepped aside when she approached. The break room went silent when she entered. Even executives who'd laughed at Carla's jokes now nodded respectfully as she passed. She hated every second of it. Did you hear Bennett's being investigated for embezzlement? A woman from HR whispered near the copier as Mira waited for her documents. 2 years of stealing from company funds. And Marcus? Word is he owes money to some dangerous people in Southie. Debt collectors showed up at his apartment. Sharon's worse. Moretti made sure every construction company in New England knows she's a corporate spy. She's blacklisted. Myra's stomach churned. She grabbed her copies and hurried back to her desk, but the whispers followed her. By Friday, a dozen roses appeared on her desk. No card. Just blood-red roses in a crystal vase. Patricia, Dante's secretary, smiled when she saw them. Someone has an admirer. Who sent these? Mira asked, already knowing the answer.
No idea.
They were here when I arrived this morning. Patricia's smile suggested she knew exactly who'd sent them. Mira waited until lunch, then marched to Dante's office. She didn't knock. He looked up from his laptop, unsurprised. Mira. Stop, she set the vase on his desk with more force than necessary. Whatever you're doing, stop. I sent you flowers. That's hardly a crime. You destroyed 3 people's lives. Dante closed his laptop with deliberate calm. I held 3 people accountable for their crimes. There's a difference. Everyone thinks I'm your... Mira couldn't finish the sentence. The word mistress burned on her tongue. My what? Dante's voice was dangerously soft. Say it. They think I'm sleeping with you for protection. Then they're idiots, he stood, moving around his desk. And if anyone says that to your face, I want their name. You're making it worse. Myra's voice cracked. I was invisible before. Now I'm some kind of untouchable princess in a tower, and everyone's terrified to even look at me wrong. Good. The single word hit her like a slap. Good? You think this is good? I think, Dante said carefully, that for 3 years you've been treated like furniture. Used, disrespected, and ignored. Now people see you. They respect you. They think twice before. Before what? Before being human around me. Myra's hands shook. Jessica from accounting won't even eat lunch with me anymore. Tom from IT literally crossed the street to avoid me yesterday. I'm not protected, Dante.
I'm isolated.
Something flickered in his expression. Doubt, maybe, or regret. That wasn't my intention, but it's what happened. Mira sank into a chair, exhausted. I know you think you're helping. I know you believe you owe me something. But this, she gestured at the office, the building, the invisible barrier that now surrounded her. This isn't protection. It's a cage. Dante was quiet for a long moment. Then he moved to the bar cart and poured 2 glasses of water, offering her one. You're right. Mira blinked. What? You're right, he repeated, sitting across from her. I overreached. I was so focused on punishing the people who hurt you that I didn't consider how it would affect your daily life. The admission shocked her more than anything else that week. Men like Dante Moretti didn't admit mistakes. I can't undo what's done, he continued. Bennett, Marcus, and Sharon committed crimes. They would have been fired regardless. But the way I handled it, he paused, choosing his words carefully. I let my anger guide me instead of my judgment. Why? Mira asked quietly. Why does this matter so much to you? Dante leaned back, his expression distant. 7 years ago, I woke up in a hospital bed. My mother was there crying. She told me the doctors said I shouldn't have survived. That if I'd been in that car 30 seconds longer, I would have died. He met Myra's eyes. You gave me 30 seconds. You gave me 7 years with my mother before she passed. You gave me time to build this company, to honor my father's legacy, to become someone worth saving. Myra's throat tightened. I didn't know. I'm not telling you for sympathy, Dante's voice was firm. I'm telling you so you understand. This isn't about possession or control. It's about the fact that every good thing in my life exists because you stopped. Because you were brave when you didn't have to be. So, what do we do now? Mira whispered. Dante thought for a moment, then pulled out his phone. He typed something, then looked up. We changed tactics. No more grand gestures. No more public displays. But the security stays discreet, invisible, just like you prefer. I can live with that. And, he stood, extending his hand, I want you to know something. You will not be isolated here. If people are afraid to approach you because they think I'll retaliate, then I'll make it clear that's not the case. Mira shook his hand, surprised by how natural it felt. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. A slight smile touched his lips. You still have to attend the company lunch next week. Face everyone. Show them you're not some untouchable figure in a tower. Mira groaned. I hate company lunches. I know. I'll suffer through it with you. As she turned to leave, Dante called out. Mira? Keep the roses. They were expensive. Despite everything, she laughed. They're going in the break room. Everyone can enjoy them. After she left, Dante returned to his desk and opened a secure message from Vincent. Kellerman Construction has been asking questions about your executive assistant. Recommend increased vigilance. Dante's jaw tightened. The rival company was sniffing around. They'd seen Carla's firing, heard the rumors, and now they were probing for weaknesses. He typed back, double her security. I want to know who's asking questions and why. And Vincent, keep it invisible. She doesn't need to know yet. He hit send, then stared at the city below. Mira thought the danger was over, that the bullies had been dealt with. She didn't understand that in his world, showing protection was the same as painting a target. People would see her as his weakness now. And in Boston's cutthroat construction industry, weaknesses got exploited. Dante had promised Mira dignity instead of possession. Now he had to deliver it while keeping her safe from threats she didn't even know existed. He pulled up the security feeds, found the camera showing Myra's desk, and watched her place the roses in the break room exactly like she'd said. 3 coworkers immediately approached her, smiling, chatting. The isolation was breaking already. Dante allowed himself a small smile. Then he returned to his computer and began planning for the wars that were coming, the ones Mira would never see, but that he'd fight in the shadows to keep her world bright. That's what protection really meant. Not cages or grand gestures. Just silent, relentless vigilance. The article hit the Boston Herald on Monday morning. Moretti's mystery woman, CEO fires senior staff over unknown assistant. Mira was brewing coffee in her apartment when her phone started buzzing. Text after text from coworkers, most saying the same thing. Have you seen the news? Her hands trembled as she pulled up the article on her laptop. Sources close to Moretti Construction reveal that CEO Dante Moretti fired 3 senior employees following an altercation at a company event. The catalyst? An executive assistant with no prior management experience and suspicious proximity to the notoriously private billionaire. She came out of nowhere 3 years ago, says an anonymous insider. Now suddenly she's untouchable? Everyone knows what that means. The article included a photo, grainy but unmistakable, of Dante crouching beside her in the ballroom, his hand on her arm. The caption read, Moretti tends to injured assistant while 200 guests are dismissed. Myra's stomach turned. They made it sound sordid, calculated. Like she was some kind of manipulative gold digger who'd orchestrated the entire thing. Her phone rang. Patricia. Don't come in today, Patricia said without preamble. There are reporters outside the building. At least a dozen.
What?
Mira moved to her window. Her apartment was in a modest neighborhood in Dorchester, 20 minutes from downtown. Surely they wouldn't. A white news van was parked across the street. Oh God. Mira stepped back from the window, her heart racing. Mr. Moretti wants you to stay home until this blows over. He's handling it. How did they find me? Patricia hesitated. Someone leaked your address. We're trying to figure out who. After hanging up, Mira paced her small living room. This was exactly what she'd feared. The attention, the exposure, the invasion of privacy. For 3 years, she'd been invisible. Now her face was in the newspaper, her life under scrutiny, her carefully constructed anonymity shattered. A knock at her door made her jump. She peered through the peephole. A man in a suit stood there, holding a microphone. Behind him, a cameraman. Ms. Chun? I'm Derek Matthews from Channel 7. We'd just like to ask you a few questions about your relationship with Dante Moretti. Mira backed away from the door, her breath coming in short gasps. This was a nightmare. Her ex-husband would see this. Everyone from her old life would see this. The privacy she'd fought so hard to maintain was dissolving in real time.
Her phone buzzed again.
An unknown number. She almost didn't answer, but something made her pick up. Don't open the door. Dante's voice was controlled but urgent. Don't go outside. Don't talk to anyone. They found my apartment. I know. I'm sending someone to get you. No, the word came out sharper than intended. No more grand gestures, remember? I can handle. Mira, something in his tone stopped her. This isn't a grand gesture. This is safety. Someone leaked your information to the press deliberately. Someone wants you exposed and vulnerable. Why would anyone? Because they want to hurt me through you, Dante's voice was grim. And right now, you're standing in front of a window in a ground floor apartment with no security system. So please, for once, let me help. Mira glanced at the window. She'd pulled the curtains, but he was right. Her apartment was indefensible. Who leaked my information? We're working on it. Vincent thinks it's Kellerman Construction. They've been circling since last week, asking questions, digging for dirt. Your competitor?
Yes.
And they're not above using people to get what they want. A pause. My driver will be there in 10 minutes. Black Mercedes. License plate starts with 7XK. Don't open the door for anyone else. After Dante hung up, Mira stood frozen in her living room. This was spinning out of control. She'd saved a man's life 7 years ago, asked for nothing in return, and now she was caught in some kind of corporate warfare she didn't understand. Another knock. Harder this time. Miss Chun, we know you're in there. We just want your side of the story. Are you and Dante Moretti involved romantically? Did you manipulate the situation to get those employees fired? Manipulate. The word hit like a physical blow. Mira grabbed her phone and did something she never did. She called Dante back. He answered on the first ring. What's wrong? I want to quit, the words tumbled out. I'll transfer somewhere else, leave the company, whatever it takes to make this stop. If I'm gone, they'll leave you alone.
No.
Dante. Listen to me. His voice was steel wrapped in velvet. That's exactly what they want. They want you scared and running, so they can write whatever narrative they choose. Moretti's mystery woman flees in scandal. Assistant quits amid controversy. They'll paint you as guilty regardless of what you do. So what do? You stand your ground. A pause. And you let me handle the rest. I don't want you to handle it. Every time you handle something, it gets bigger. More attention, more drama, more. I know, Dante's voice softened. And I'm sorry. But Mira, if you walk away now, they win. The bullies win. The people trying to use you as ammunition win. Is that what you want?
No.
God, no. She'd spent too many years letting people push her around. First her ex-husband, then her coworkers. Running had kept her safe, but it had also kept her small. The car just pulled up outside your building, Dante said. Vincent is driving. He'll bring you somewhere safe while we sort this out. Mira peered through the curtains. A black Mercedes had indeed appeared, and a broad-shouldered man in a dark suit was getting out. She recognized Vincent from the ballroom. Where are you taking me? Somewhere the reporters can't follow. Somewhere you can breathe without cameras in your face, he hesitated. Do you trust me? That was the question, wasn't it? Mira looked at her small apartment, her safe space, now invaded. She thought about the highway 7 years ago, the choice to stop or keep driving. She'd chosen courage then. Maybe it was time to choose it again. I trust you, she said quietly. Then go with Vincent. I'll meet you soon. Mira grabbed her bag, took a deep breath, and opened her door. The reporters surged forward, shouting questions, cameras flashing. Vincent appeared like a wall between her and the chaos, his arm creating a barrier as he guided her to the car. Is it true you're Moretti's mistress? Did you seduce him for money? How long have you been sleeping together? Each question was a knife. Mira kept her head down, let Vincent shield her, and slid into the Mercedes's back seat. The door closed, muffling the noise. As Vincent pulled away from the curb, Mira looked back at the reporters still filming, still shouting. Her private life was being dissected by strangers, her reputation shredded by people who didn't know her. And somewhere in the city, Dante Moretti was preparing to go to war to protect a woman who'd saved his life 7 years ago. Mira just hoped they both survived what came next. Vincent drove Mira to a luxury high-rise in Back Bay. The building had underground parking, private elevators, and security that made airport checkpoints look casual. He escorted her to a penthouse apartment on the 23rd floor, sleek, modern, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Charles River. Mr. Moretti keeps this place for out-of-town clients, Vincent explained, handing her a key card. You'll be safe here. Security monitors every entrance, and the press doesn't know this location exists. How long do I need to stay? Vincent's expression was sympathetic. Until the heat dies down. Could be a few days, could be a week. After he left, Mira explored the apartment. It was beautiful but impersonal. Expensive furniture with no photographs, art that looked professionally selected, a kitchen stocked with basics but nothing personal. A gilded cage, just like she'd accused Dante of building. Her phone buzzed.
Dante.
Are you settled? Vincent said you made it safely. She typed back, yes.
Thank you.
This is too much. It's necessary.
Get some rest.
I'll come by tonight after I deal with the press. Mira set her phone down and moved to the windows. Boston spread out before her, beautiful and indifferent. Somewhere down there, reporters were probably still camped outside her apartment. Somewhere, people were reading that article and making judgments about her character based on lies and innuendo. She'd never felt more trapped. Hours passed. Mira tried to work on her laptop, but concentration was impossible. She made tea she didn't drink, watched the sun set over the river, jumped at every small sound. At 8 p.m., her phone rang. Unknown number again. Hello. Heavy breathing. Then a voice, male and rough. You should have stayed invisible, little mouse. Myra's blood turned to ice. Who is this? Someone who's been paid to deliver a message. Stay away from Moretti, or you'll regret it. The line went dead. Myra's hand shook so badly, she nearly dropped the phone. She immediately called Dante. Someone just threatened me, she said when he answered. They called me Little Mouse, that's what Carla used to call me. They knew. Where are you right now? Dante's voice was sharp. The penthouse. Where you sent me. Don't move. I'm 10 minutes away. Vincent, change of plans. She heard him giving orders in the background. Mira, listen to me. Lock the door. Don't answer for anyone except me. I'll call when I'm outside.
Dante, I'm scared.
I know. I'm coming. She'd barely hung up when she heard footsteps in the hallway outside. Heavy, deliberate. The kind of footsteps meant to intimidate. Mira backed away from the door, her heart hammering. The penthouse suddenly felt less like a sanctuary and more like a trap. She was 23 floors up with nowhere to run. A knock. Hard enough to rattle the frame. We know you're in there, sweetheart. Open up. We just want to talk. Mira grabbed a knife from the kitchen, knowing it was useless, but needing something in her hands. She moved to the bathroom, the only room with a lock, and called 911 with shaking fingers. 911, what's your emergency? Someone's trying to break into my apartment. I'm at. She rattled off the address. Police are on their way. Stay on the line with me. The pounding got louder. Then voices arguing. We don't have time for this. The boss said scare her not. She's already scared. Now we. The voices cut off abruptly. New sounds, a scuffle, something heavy hitting a wall, a grunt of pain. Then silence. Mira pressed herself against the bathroom wall, the knife clutched in her white-knuckled grip, the 911 operator asking if she was still there. A single knock.
Calm.
Controlled. Mira, it's me. Open the door. Dante's voice. She nearly sobbed with relief. Rushing out of the bathroom, she fumbled with the locks and yanked the door open. Dante stood in the hallway, his suit jacket gone, his shirt sleeves rolled up, and his knuckles bleeding. Behind him, Vincent had two men in headlocks, both larger than him, both looking dazed. Further down the hall, two more men were crumpled on the floor, not moving. Are you hurt? Dante's eyes scanned her face, her body, checking for injuries. No, The knife slipped from her fingers, clattering to the floor. You didn't use security. You came alone. Vincent was 30 seconds behind me. Dante stepped inside, and Vincent hauled the two conscious thugs backward. But yes, I came alone. You could have been hurt. They were here to hurt you, his voice was flat, final. That wasn't going to happen. Police sirens wailed in the distance, growing closer. Dante pulled out his phone and made a call. Detective Morrison? Dante Moretti. I have 4 men who just attempted to assault one of my employees. Yes, we'll cooperate fully. The penthouse on Beacon Street. He hung up and finally, looked at Mira with something other than controlled fury. Are you okay? I don't know, her voice cracked. They called me, threatened me. Then they came here. How did they even know where I was? Dante's expression darkened. That's what I intend to find out. Vincent appeared in the doorway. Police are on their way up. These 2 are singing already. They were hired by someone at Kellerman Construction. Paid to scare Ms. Chun into quitting. Names, Dante said coldly. Working on it, boss. The police arrived, 4 officers who clearly knew Dante by reputation. They took statements, arrested the 4 men, and promised a full investigation. Detective Morrison, a grizzled man in his 50s, pulled Dante aside. This is the 2nd incident involving your company this month, he said quietly. You're making enemies, Moretti. I'm eliminating them, Dante replied. There's a difference. After the police left with the suspects, Mira and Dante stood alone in the penthouse. The adrenaline was wearing off, leaving her shaky and exhausted. This was my fault, Dante said quietly. I should have anticipated this. Should have had better security. Stop, Mira surprised herself with the firmness in her voice. Just stop. You didn't hire those men. You didn't leak my address. You didn't write that article. She moved closer to him. You saved me. Again. I shouldn't have had to. You shouldn't be in danger because of me. Maybe not, Mira looked at his bleeding knuckles. But I am. And running away won't change that now, will it? Dante met her eyes, and something shifted between them. Understanding. Acceptance. The acknowledgement that they were in this together now, whether they'd planned it or not. No, he said softly. Running won't help. Not anymore. Then what do we do? Dante's jaw tightened. We stop playing defense. Tomorrow, we go on offense. What does that mean? It means, Dante said, his voice carrying the weight of unspoken promises and threats, that Kellerman Construction just made the biggest mistake of their corporate lives. And by the time I'm done, they'll wish they'd never heard your name. Mira should have been frightened by the cold certainty in his voice. Instead, for the first time in days, she felt safe. This wasn't about protection anymore. This was war. The next morning, Dante arrived at the penthouse with coffee and bagels. He looked like he hadn't slept. His tie was loosened, shadows darkened his eyes, and his jaw was set with the kind of determination that meant he'd been working through the night. Pack a bag, he said without preamble. I have a secured apartment in Cambridge. Better security, closer to my office, and completely off the grid. Mira set down her coffee cup.
No.
Dante blinked, clearly not expecting resistance. Mira, those men found you here. Until we know how deep this goes. No, she repeated, standing. I'm not hiding anymore. This isn't about hiding. It's about keeping you safe until... Until what? Until you've destroyed Kellerman Construction? Until every threat is neutralized? Until I can live my life without looking over my shoulder? Myra's voice rose despite her effort to stay calm. When does it end, Dante? He set the coffee down carefully, his movements controlled. When you're safe. I'm never going to be completely safe. Not as long as people know I matter to you. She saw him flinch at the word matter, but she pressed on. Don't you see? Every time you protect me, you prove I'm important. Every secured apartment, every security detail, every threat you eliminate, it all just paints a bigger target on my back. So, what do you want me to do? Frustration crept into his voice. Let them threaten you? Let them hurt you? I want you to let me stand on my own. Mira moved closer, forcing him to look at her. If I hide, they win. They'll think you own me, that I'm your possession to be tucked away. But if I walk free, they'll come after you again. Dante finished grimly. Maybe. Probably. Myra's hands clenched at her sides. But at least I'll be living my life instead of existing in a gilded prison. Dante was quiet for a long moment, his dark eyes searching her face. You know what you're asking? I'm asking you to trust me. The way I trusted you 7 years ago when I pulled you from that car. The comparison hit its mark. Dante's expression shifted, surprise, then understanding, then something that looked almost like pain. That was different, he said quietly. You were saving my life, and you're trying to save mine. But Dante, Mira reached out, touching his arm. There's more to living than just surviving. He looked down at her hand on his arm, then back at her face. I can't just let you walk into danger. Then don't. Give me security, but make it invisible. Let me go back to my apartment, back to work, back to my life. But don't make me disappear, her voice softened. I've spent too many years being invisible. I won't go back to that. Not even for you. Dante's jaw worked as he processed her words. She could see the war happening behind his eyes, the need to protect versus the need to respect her autonomy. Finally, he nodded. Okay, but with conditions. Of course there are conditions, Mira said, almost smiling despite everything. Security stays, but discreet. Vincent assigns a team that blends in. They won't be obvious, but they'll be there. He held up a finger when she started to protest.
Non negotiable.
Those men got within 10 feet of you last night. That doesn't happen again.
Fine.
What else? You install a security system in your apartment. Cameras, alarms, panic button, the works. And his voice turned steely. You carry this. He pulled a small device from his pocket, no bigger than a car key fob. Press the button, and Vincent's team arrives in under 3 minutes. No matter where you are. Mira took the device, feeling its weight.
It was a leash in a way, but it was also a lifeline.
Okay. And one more thing. Dante stepped closer, his presence overwhelming in the small space. You don't hide what happened. Not the article, not the threats, not any of it. We control the narrative before Kellerman does.
How?
You give an interview. Tell your side. On your terms. Myra's stomach dropped. I can't. Public speaking, cameras. I'll be there with you. We do it together, his voice gentled. Mira, they've made you the villain in their story. The mistress, the manipulator, the woman who got innocent people fired. If you stay silent, that's the story that sticks. She wanted to argue, to refuse, to do anything but put herself on camera for the world to judge. But he was right. Silence had protected her once. Now it was being used as a weapon against her. What would I even say? The truth. Dante's eyes held hers. That you're an employee who was harassed. That you've never been romantically involved with me. That you're a private person who wants to do her job without being targeted. And the part about saving your life. He hesitated. That's your story to tell. If you want people to know, we tell them. If you don't, we keep it private. The choice settled on Myra's shoulders. Stay invisible and be destroyed by rumors, or step into the light and face judgment head-on. Neither option felt safe, but at least one felt honest. Okay, she said finally. I'll do the interview, but I'm not talking about the accident. That's private. That's ours. Something flickered in Dante's expression at the word ours. Surprise, gratitude, something warmer she couldn't quite name. Deal, he extended his hand, formal despite the intimacy of the moment. Mira shook it, feeling the calluses on his palm, the controlled strength in his grip. And Dante? After this, after the interview and the investigation and whatever else happens, I want my life back. Not a protected version. Not a controlled version.
Just
my life. Then that's what you'll have. He released her hand, but didn't step back. You'll walk free, but not unguarded. That's the best I can offer. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't complete freedom, but it was more than she'd had in years, more than she'd had with her ex-husband, more than she'd had hiding in plain sight at Moretti Construction. It was a start. When's the interview? She asked. Tomorrow afternoon. Channel 4. Live broadcast. Dante's slight smile was almost apologetic. Vincent's already arranged it. Of course he has. Mira shook her head, but she was smiling too. You know, for someone who promised no more grand gestures, you're not very good at keeping that promise. Consider my last one. Dante moved toward the door, then paused. Mira? For what it's worth, I think you're the bravest person I've ever met. Before she could respond, he was gone, leaving her alone in the penthouse with a panic button in her hand and a television interview looming in her future. Mira looked at the device, then at the city beyond the windows. Somewhere out there, people were plotting against her. Somewhere, enemies were circling. Somewhere, her carefully constructed invisible life was burning down. But for the first time in years, she wasn't running from the flames. She was walking straight through them. The interview aired at 5 p.m. the next day. Mira sat beside Dante in Channel 4's studio, her hands folded in her lap to hide their trembling. The host, Sandra Chun, no relation, was professional and direct. Miss Chun, there are rumors circulating about your relationship with Mr. Moretti. Can you address them? Mira took a breath. I'm Mr. Moretti's executive assistant. I've worked at Moretti Construction for 3 years. We have a professional relationship. Nothing more. But the incident at the company's celebration. I was physically assaulted by a senior manager who had been harassing me for months, Mira said, her voice stronger now. Mr. Moretti responded as any responsible CEO would when an employee is attacked on company property. Some say his response was excessive. 3 people lost their jobs. 3 people committed crimes. Dante's voice was calm but firm. Embezzlement. Corporate espionage. Creating a hostile work environment. They weren't fired because of Ms. Chun. They were fired because they broke the law. The interview continued for 20 minutes. By the end, Mira felt wrung out but strangely lighter. She'd told her truth. Now people could believe it or not. That was their choice. The backlash started within hours. That evening, Dante's phone buzzed constantly. Vincent appeared at the penthouse with his tablet, his expression grim. Kellerman Construction just released a statement, he said, pulling up the press release. They're calling the interview damage control and claiming Moretti Construction has been using intimidation tactics against competitors for years. Dante read the statement, his jaw tightening with each line. They're escalating. There's more. Vincent swiped to another screen. 3 of our major clients received anonymous emails this morning claiming we've been inflating project costs and using substandard materials. Complete fabrication, but the damage is done, Dante finished. Even proving it's false takes time, and doubt spreads faster than truth. Mira felt sick. This is because of me. This is because Kellerman sees an opportunity, Dante corrected. They've been trying to undermine us for years. You just gave them an angle. So, what do we do? Dante's expression turned cold, calculating. We dismantle them, piece by piece. Over the next 72 hours, Mira watched Dante wage war from the shadows. He never raised his voice, never made public threats, never did anything that could be traced back to him directly. But the results were devastating. On Wednesday, Kellerman's primary investor suddenly pulled funding, citing concerns about company ethics. Vincent later mentioned, casually over coffee, that said investor had received documentation about Kellerman's habit of bribing city inspectors. On Thursday, 3 of Kellerman's senior engineers accepted positions at Moretti Construction, bringing their expertise and insider knowledge with them. Dante didn't recruit them. They came to him, having suddenly discovered that Kellerman had been underpaying them for years. On Friday, the Boston Building Commission announced an investigation into Kellerman Construction's last 5 projects. Multiple code violations. Unsafe practices. 1 building that might need to be condemned. How are you doing this? Mira asked Dante that evening. They were in his office, the city dark beyond the windows. I'm not doing anything, Dante said, reviewing contracts. I'm simply allowing information to reach the people who need it. That's a pretty way of saying you're destroying them. He looked up, his eyes unreadable. They sent men to threaten you. To hurt you. Did you expect me to send a strongly worded letter? I expected. Mira paused, unsure what she'd expected. I don't know. This feels ruthless. Dante supplied. It is. But so is trying to terrorize an innocent woman to gain corporate advantage. He stood, moving to the window. Do you know what people like Kellerman understand? Power, control, consequences. You can't negotiate with them. You can't appeal to their better nature. You can only make the cost of attacking you so high that they never try again. And what about the people who work for Kellerman? The ones who had nothing to do with this. The good ones will find new jobs. The ones complicit in illegal activities will face legal consequences. Dante turned to face her. I'm not a monster, Mira. But I'm not a saint either. In my world, you protect your own, or you lose everything. Mira studied him. This man who'd built an empire, who commanded loyalty with a look, who fought battles she couldn't see to keep her safe. Your world sounds exhausting. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. It is. By Monday, Kellerman Construction was in free fall. Their stock had dropped 40%. For major contracts had been cancelled. The FBI had opened an investigation into their business practices. James Kellerman himself, CEO and Dante's longtime rival, called for a meeting. He wants to negotiate, Vincent reported, probably hoping to salvage what's left. Tell him I'll meet him. Tomorrow. Neutral location. Dante's voice was ice.
And Vincent?
Make sure he knows Ms. Chun is off limits.
Permanently.
The meeting took place at a downtown restaurant, private room, just Dante and James Kellerman. Vincent told Mira about it later, after Dante had returned. Kellerman tried to apologize, Vincent said, shaking his head. Said the men who threatened you were overzealous contractors acting without his knowledge. Claimed he'd never authorized anything that extreme. Did Dante believe him? Doesn't matter if he believed him. Kellerman got the message. Vincent's smile was sharp. Boss told him that if anyone even looks at you wrong, he'll finish what he started. Kellerman Construction won't just lose contracts. It'll cease to exist. And Kellerman agreed. He didn't have a choice. He's hemorrhaging money, losing clients, and facing federal investigation. The boss offered him a way out, cooperate fully with authorities, admit to the harassment campaign, and pay damages. In exchange, Moretti won't pursue complete destruction.
That's
surprisingly merciful, Mira said slowly. Vincent laughed. Merciful? Ms. Chun, Kellerman Construction was worth $300 million 2 weeks ago. By the time this is done, they'll be lucky to be worth $30 million. The boss didn't show mercy. He just decided complete annihilation wasn't necessary once the point was made. That night, Mira couldn't sleep. She kept thinking about the cascade of consequences. People losing jobs, a company crumbling, families affected by decisions made in boardrooms and back alleys. All because she'd pulled a man from a burning car 7 years ago. All because she'd been brave when it mattered. At 2 a.m., her phone buzzed.
Dante.
Can't sleep either. She typed back, is it always like this in your world? His response came quickly, yes. But you get used to it. And Mira? Kellerman's finished. No one else will try what he did. You're safe now. Mira stared at the message. Safe. The word felt foreign, impossible. She'd spent so many years running, hiding, shrinking herself to avoid danger. Now danger had found her anyway, and a man with blood on his hands had fought it off. She typed, thank you. For everything. His reply was simple. You saved me first. This is just me returning the favor.
But they both knew it was more than that now.
Much more. 3 months later, Mira stood outside Suffolk County Superior Court, her palms sweating despite the cool November air. The workplace harassment case had finally reached trial, and today she would testify against Carla Bennett, Marcus Chun, and Sharon Moss. Dante appeared beside her, looking impeccable in a charcoal suit. You don't have to do this. We have enough evidence without your testimony. I know, Mira adjusted the strap of her bag. But I need to. For me. Inside, the courtroom was smaller than she'd expected. Carla sat at the defendant's table with her lawyer, looking diminished somehow. Her designer clothes replaced with a conservative suit, her usual arrogance buried under stress lines and hollow eyes. Marcus sat beside her, fidgeting. Sharon stared straight ahead, expressionless. The gallery was packed. Reporters. Former Moretti construction employees. People Mira had never met but who'd followed the story. She felt their eyes on her as she took her seat behind the prosecution table. The trial moved with procedural efficiency. Security footage was shown, Carla shoving Mira, the glasses shattering, Mira on the ground bleeding. Testimony from witnesses who'd seen the harassment but said nothing. Documentation of the embezzlement, the corporate espionage, the systematic bullying that had gone unchecked for years. Then it was Myra's turn. "Miss Chun, please approach the witness stand." Her legs felt unsteady as she walked forward. She was sworn in, her voice barely above a whisper as she promised to tell the truth. The prosecutor, a sharp woman named Diana Ross, no relation to the singer, smiled encouragingly. "Ms. Chun, how long did you work at Moretti Construction before the incident?" 3 years. "And during those 3 years, did the defendants engage in harassment toward you?" Myra's throat tightened. "Yes. Can you describe the nature of this harassment?" The words came slowly at first, then faster. She described the name-calling, the deliberate exclusion, the way they dumped their work on her desk and claimed credit for her ideas. The time Marcus had locked her in a supply closet as a joke, the time Sharon had spilled coffee on Myra's presentation materials minutes before an important meeting. The constant, grinding cruelty that had made each workday an endurance test. "Why didn't you report this behavior?" Diana asked. Mira looked at her hands. "Because I didn't think anyone would believe me. Because I needed the job. Because," she paused, gathering courage. "Because I'd spent most of my adult life being told I wasn't worth defending. I believed it." And the night of the company's celebration, what happened? Mira recounted the events in detail. Carla's taunts, the insinuations about her relationship with Dante, the shove, the fall, the humiliation of lying on the floor while 200 people watched. "What changed?" Diana asked. "Why speak up now?" Mira finally looked up, her eyes finding Dante in the gallery. He sat in the back row, perfectly still, his expression encouraging. "Someone showed me I was worth defending," she said quietly. "And once I believed that, I couldn't stay silent anymore. Not for myself, and not for the next person they might target." The defense attorney, a slick man in an expensive suit, rose for cross-examination. "Miss Chun, isn't it true that you received special treatment from Mr. Moretti?" "I received the same treatment as any employee who does their job well. But Mr. Moretti fired 3 senior employees on your behalf. That seems like rather extraordinary intervention." "He fired 3 employees who committed crimes," Mira corrected, her voice steadier now. "The evidence speaks for itself. Convenient that all 3 happened to be people who had conflicts with you." "Convenient for who?" Mira met his eyes. "I didn't embezzle money. I didn't sell company secrets. I didn't create a hostile work environment. They did. The fact that they also harassed me doesn't change their guilt. It just explains why their crimes finally came to light." The attorney tried several more angles, but Mira held firm. 3 years of silence had given her plenty of time to think about what she should have said. Now she finally had the chance. After her testimony, Marcus and Sharon's lawyers approached the prosecution about plea deals. Only Carla insisted on taking her chances with the jury. During closing arguments, Carla's attorney painted her as a dedicated employee having a bad day, someone who'd made a mistake but didn't deserve to have her career destroyed. Diana Ross stood and addressed the jury with quiet intensity. "This case isn't about a bad day. It's about a pattern of abuse that lasted years. It's about 3 people who used their power to torment someone they saw as weak. Someone who couldn't fight back." She walked to where the security footage was displayed on a screen. "But here's what they didn't understand. Silence isn't weakness. Mira Chen's silence was survival. And when she finally spoke, when she finally had support, she didn't seek revenge. She didn't retaliate. She simply told the truth." Diana turned to the jury. "The defendants want you to believe this is about corporate politics or personal grudges. But look at the evidence. Look at the footage. Look at the documentation. This is about accountability. About making it clear that no one, regardless of their title or tenure, gets to abuse another human being without consequences. The jury deliberated for 4 hours. When they returned, the 4 women stood. In the case of the Commonwealth versus Carla Bennett, on the charge of assault and battery, we find the defendant guilty. On the charge of creating a hostile work environment, guilty. On the charge of embezzlement, guilty. Similar verdicts followed for Marcus and Sharon on their respective charges. Carla's face crumbled. Marcus put his head in his hands. Sharon remained motionless, though a single tear traced down her cheek. Mira felt no satisfaction, no triumph, just a quiet sense of closure. The people who'd made her life miserable were finally facing consequences. Not because she was Dante Moretti's protected employee, but because justice, slow and imperfect, had finally arrived. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed. Mira stood at the microphone with Diana beside her, Dante watching from a respectful distance. "I'm not here because of who protected me," Mira said, her voice carrying across the steps. "I'm here because silence makes bullies stronger. Because speaking up, even when you're terrified, is the only way things change." She looked directly at the cameras. If you're being bullied, harassed, or abused at work, document everything. Tell someone. Keep telling people until someone listens. You deserve to work without fear. Everyone does. As she stepped away from the microphone, the crowd erupted with questions. But Mira didn't answer them. She walked down the courthouse steps, head high, shoulders back, no longer trying to make herself small. Dante fell into step beside her, not touching, just present. "You did well," he said quietly. "I told the truth," Mira replied. "That's all. That's everything." They reached his car, where Vincent waited. But before getting in, Mira turned to look back at the courthouse where justice, imperfect but real, had finally been served. She'd stopped being invisible, and she'd never be silent again. The story dominated headlines for a week. Corporate harassment case ends in convictions. Moretti assistant's testimony praised as brave stand against workplace bullying. Bennett sentenced to 2 years, ordered to pay restitution. Mira returned to work the following Monday, unsure what to expect. When she stepped off the elevator onto the 42nd floor, conversation didn't stop. People didn't avert their eyes. Instead, Jessica from accounting approached with a genuine smile. "Welcome back. Coffee." It was a small gesture, but it meant everything. Over the next few weeks, something shifted at Moretti Construction. People stopped whispering when Mira entered rooms. They invited her to lunch, asked her opinions in meetings, treated her like a colleague instead of a curiosity. Tom from IT stopped by her desk one afternoon. "Hey, I just wanted to apologize for crossing the street that day, for avoiding you. I was scared of getting caught up in the drama, but that was cowardly. You deserved better." Mira looked up at him, this man who'd once helped her reset her password and told terrible jokes. "Thank you for saying that. For what it's worth," Tom added. "You're kind of a legend around here now. In a good way." After he left, Patricia appeared with a stack of folders. "Mr. Moretti wants to see you when you have a moment." Mira found Dante in his office, reviewing architectural plans. He looked up when she entered, and something about his expression had changed. The tension that had lived in his shoulders for months was finally gone. "How's your first day back?" he asked. Surprisingly normal, she sat across from him. "People are actually talking to me like I'm human." "You always were." They just needed permission to see it. He closed the plans and leaned back. "I wanted to tell you, Kellerman Construction filed for bankruptcy this morning. James Kellerman is stepping down as CEO." Mira absorbed the news. "Do you feel satisfied?" "I feel like the threat is neutralized," Dante said carefully. "Satisfaction is something else entirely. Was it worth it? All of this?" He studied her for a long moment. "You're safe. Your reputation is intact. The people who hurt you faced consequences. Yes, it was worth it. Even though it cost you?" The energy, the resources, the risks you took. Mira, Dante stood and moved to the window, his favorite thinking spot. 7 years ago, you risked your life for a stranger. You didn't know who I was, what I did, whether I deserved saving. You just acted because it was right. He turned to face her. Everything I did was a fraction of what you gave me that night.
So yes.
Worth it. Something warm and complicated bloomed in Myra's chest. The debt's paid then. We're even. Are we? Dante's voice was soft, questioning. Before Mira could respond, her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. You should be proud. You changed things here. Former Moretti employee. More texts followed throughout the day. People thanking her for speaking up. Women sharing their own harassment stories and saying her testimony had given them courage to report abuse at their own companies. One message simply read, "You made me feel less alone." That evening, Mira sat in her apartment, finally feeling like home again with its new security system and the knowledge that she'd chosen to stay rather than being forced to hide. She opened her laptop and began writing. Not a blog post or an article, just her story, in her own words, for herself. She wrote about the highway, about pulling a bleeding stranger from fire and smoke, about the nightmares that followed, the way she'd see burning cars every time she closed her eyes for months afterward. About choosing to disappear rather than be found by an ex-husband who treated her like property. She wrote about 3 years of shrinking herself, about learning to be invisible because visible meant vulnerable, about the night Carla pushed her and everything changed. She wrote about Dante, the stranger who became her boss, who'd been searching for her while she'd been hiding in plain sight. About protection that felt like possession until she understood the difference. About learning to stand up instead of staying small. When she finished, dawn was breaking over Boston. She saved the document, titled simply "The Night I Stopped Running," and closed her laptop.
Her phone rang. Dante.
"Did you sleep?" he asked without preamble.
No.
You? No, a pause. "I've been thinking about what you said. About the debt being paid." Myra's heart rate picked up. "And you were right. The debt is paid. I've repaid what I owed you from the highway." His voice dropped lower, more intimate. "But that's not why I'm still calling you at dawn. That's not why I care if you slept or if you're okay or if you're finally feeling safe. Why then?" Silence stretched between them, filled with everything they hadn't said, all the moments that had accumulated over months of crisis and protection and partnership. "Because," Dante said finally, "somewhere between the ballroom and the courthouse, between the threats and the trials, you stopped being an obligation. And I stopped being your protector. We became something else. What are we now?" Mira whispered, "I don't know, but I'd like to find out. Without debts. Without obligations. Just us." Mira looked out at Boston waking up, the city that had witnessed her transformation from invisible to invincible, from silent to strong. "I'd like that too." "Coffee?" Dante asked. "There's a place in the North End. Makes terrible coffee but incredible pastries." Mira smiled. "When?"
"Now."
"If you're free." She grabbed her jacket, checked that her panic button was in her pocket, not because she expected danger, but because she'd learned to be prepared, and headed for the door. "I'm on my way," she said. As she left her apartment, Mira caught her reflection in the hallway mirror. She looked different than she had 6 months ago. Her shoulders were back. Her head was high. Her eyes were clear and certain. She looked like someone who'd stopped running. She looked like someone who'd finally found solid ground. She looked like herself. And for the first time in years, that was enough. 6 months later, spring arrived in Boston with unexpected warmth. Mira had settled into a rhythm. Work felt purposeful, her apartment felt safe, and the nightmares about burning cars had finally stopped. The city that once felt like a place to hide had become a place to live. She'd been promoted to director of operations, a position she'd earned through merit, not protection. The promotion came with challenges, managing teams, making decisions, speaking up in meetings filled with executives. But every time doubt crept in, she remembered the courthouse steps and found her voice. One Thursday evening, after most employees had left, Mira prepared Dante's coffee, just like always. Dark roast, no sugar, a splash of cream. She'd been bringing him coffee for 3.5 years now. The ritual had become comfortable, familiar. She knocked on his office door.
Come in.
Dante sat at his desk, reviewing contracts, his reading glasses perched on his nose. The sight made her smile. This powerful man who dismantled competitors and faced down threats, undone by small print and bad lighting. She set the coffee on his desk. Thought you might need this. He looked up, removing his glasses, and something warm passed between them. Over the past 6 months, they'd fallen into an easy partnership. Coffee meetings that stretched into lunch. Late nights reviewing projects that ended with conversations about everything except work. A slow, careful building of something neither of them wanted to rush. Thank you. He took a sip, then set the cup down. Mira, I've been thinking. Dangerous habit, she teased. About that night. The highway, his expression grew serious. I never properly thanked you. Not really. I've protected you, fought for you, tried to repay the debt. But I never just said it. He stood, moving around the desk. Thank you. For stopping. For being brave. For saving my life. Myra's throat tightened. You didn't have to do all that, you know. The protection, the investigation, everything with Kellerman. A simple thank you would have been enough. No, it wouldn't have. Dante's voice was firm, but gentle. Because you didn't just save my life that night. You showed me what real courage looks like. What it means to help someone even when it costs you. You set a standard I've been trying to live up to ever since. I think you've succeeded, Mira said softly. Have I? He studied her face. Because sometimes I wonder if I went too far. If I tried so hard to protect you that I forgot to ask what you actually needed. Mira considered his words carefully. You went too far sometimes. You made decisions I should have made. You fought battles I didn't ask you to fight, she smiled. But you also taught me something important. You showed me that accepting help isn't weakness. That letting someone care about you isn't the same as being controlled. And now?
Dante asked.
Now that the threats are gone, the trials are over, and things are finally quiet, where does that leave us? It was the question they'd been dancing around for months. The coffee meetings, the late-night conversations, the careful way they'd been building something while pretending they weren't. That depends, Mira said. Are you still protecting me out of obligation? No, his answer was immediate, certain. I'm protecting you because I care. Because somewhere in all of this, you became important to me. Not because of the highway. Because of who you are now. The woman who stood up in court. Who chose to fight instead of hide. Who brings me terrible coffee and calls me out when I'm being controlling. This coffee is perfect, Mira protested, but she was smiling. It's terrible, but I drink it anyway because you made it. They stood in the quiet office, the city lights spreading below them like a promise. Boston at night, beautiful and dangerous and full of possibility. So, what happens now? Mira asked. Now, Dante said, taking a step closer, we stop talking about debts and obligations. Stop pretending this is about repayment or protection, or anything except what it actually is. And what is it? He reached out, brushing a strand of hair from her face with unexpected gentleness. Two people who found each other in the worst circumstances and decided to build something better. Myra's heart hammered. The office will talk. They'll say I got promoted because. Let them talk. You earned your position. Anyone who questions it can review your performance records. His hand dropped to his side. But if this makes you uncomfortable, if you need time, if you want to keep things professional. I don't. Mira surprised herself with the certainty in her voice. I don't want to keep things professional. I don't want to pretend anymore. I just want to see where this goes.
No debts. No obligations.
Just us. Just us, Dante echoed, and smiled, a real smile, warm and genuine, transforming his usually serious features. Mira picked up her empty coffee tray. Same time tomorrow? I'll bring the terrible coffee. I'll be here. As she walked toward the door, Dante called out, Mira? She turned. That night on the highway, you asked me to stay awake, remember? You kept saying, stay with me. I remember. His eyes held hers across the office. I did. I stayed. And I'm not going anywhere now. Mira smiled. Neither am I. She left his office, but this time she didn't disappear. She walked through the building with her head high, her steps confident, no longer trying to be invisible. The camera panned out, showing Boston's skyline at night, a city of power and loyalty and silent debts repaid. Somewhere in that city, two people who'd saved each other were learning that the bravest thing you could do wasn't pulling someone from fire. It was letting them pull you from the shadows into the light. And finally staying there. The end.